This is called 3-row, and this is a skill passed on down from generation to generation. My dad taught me how to 3-row. His dad taught him how to 3-row. Same before with my great-grandfathers.
So tell me how many acres we're looking at. This looks huge.
If you're looking straight all the way to that tree line in the back, that's probably about 200 acres. Over the course of the last 5 years, we've lost close to 1,000 acres. This was my daddy's dream. This was his legacy. We were born and raised in this, so we kind of know what to do. We just need the right opportunities.
Black family farms are increasingly rare. Over the past 100 years, the number of Black-owned farms in America has dropped more than 95%. And that decline is in large part because of inequalities in farm loans. A majority of farmers need loans every year to buy expensive equipment, seeds, and fertilizers. The United States Department of Agriculture has a long track record of loaning less money to Black farmers, or denying them loans altogether, according to federal reports dating back to the 60s. Without the same access to funds, Black farmers struggle to keep up with their white competitors and are often forced out of business.
The whole system runs off of borrowing money and paying it back. We run a $2 million agricultural operation of sugarcane here. Say you go for $1 million loan. They'll drag you along for months at a time. And then 6 months later, well, look, we can give you $200,000. Well, how am I supposed to run $1 million farm of $200,000? Eventually, your farm is going to take a hit going down because you're not being released the amount of money that other farmers have access to.
Earlier this year, the Biden administration decided to do something about the decline in Black farmers. The COVID relief bill set aside $5 billion for farmers of color, and $4 billion of that is specifically for debt relief. So you're $600,000 in debt?
$600,000 in debt, and that debt is inherited debt. That's when my father passed away. So when I got word that there's debt cancellation, it gave me hope. It gave me courage to go down to the banks. Look, I don't have that debt above me anymore.
Now, the USDA is in charge of implementing Biden's debt relief program. On a national level, the agency says it's committed to addressing its legacy of discriminatory practices. But farmers access government services at the local level, typically through offices called Farm Service Agencies, or FSAs. And farmers that we talked to said that discrimination in these offices often goes unchecked.
This is my dad right here. This is my brother Rodney, and that's our oldest brother Edward.
You said both of your brothers are no longer farming.
No, he actually lost his home, the USDA foreclosure.
4 generations ago, the Provost family farmed 5,000 acres of land. Today, they're left with 100.
I remember my loan officer telling me, you don't look like a farmer, right? You need to start dressing more like a farmer.
What does that even mean?
You tell me what that means.
As Black farmers, we have to worry about when are we going to get a crop loan, or if we're going to get a crop loan. How much is that crop loan going to be? Sugarcane, you need between $600 to $800 per acre. I was given sometimes less than $200 an acre to farm.
The Provost filed a civil rights complaint against their local FSA office back in 2017. A year later, they were unable to make payments on previous loans, and the bank foreclosed on their house. The USDA has never responded to their complaint.
Here is our home, which I built here so I can take care of my parents. And I can't express how traumatic it was to lose this home.
We have always referred to USDA as the last plantation.
Lloyd Wright worked for the USDA for nearly 40 years and spent most of his time investigating civil rights complaints.
We had a case where the farmers who had that disasters were allowed to get debt relief, and it turned out about the same number of farmers applied that were white and Black, about 10 or so in each category. All 10 white farmers got relief, all 10 Blacks were sent to foreclosure.
We have this well-documented history of discrimination by the USDA that kind of leads to motivation for this American Rescue Act. What do you think about this program?
I think it's an excellent start for those who are still hanging on by their fingernails. And there are a lot of local officers who don't want this to happen. And there are a lot of USDA employees who don't want it to happen. So if they can figure out to delay it long enough, they'll figure out a way to stop it eventually.
How long does this type of program usually take when there's debt relief? Does it usually take a couple months?
Well, it depends on who it's going to. If they were white farmers, they'd have it already. And if they're still playing with it after Memorial Day, I think blacks should be concerned.
Something we've been hearing from farmers is that there are so many people that are saying it's not fair, that they don't deserve it, that white farmers are in debt too.
Now that we're getting ready to do a few things for a few minorities, the white farmers got an issue with it. So they only get ants in their pockets when they're giving crumbs to blacks who haven't had anything for 400 years, when they've gotten everything for all of these years.
If you're gonna farm in South Louisiana, I tell this to my son all the time, you have to be aggressive.
Ryan Dore is a sugarcane farmer in the same county as Eddie Lewis and the Provost family. He also sits on the local FSA county committee where he advises FSA employees who are in charge of approving or denying farm loans. Can you talk about your initial reaction when you heard that there was going to be money allocated to disadvantaged farmers to clear their debt?
My initial reaction, and it's my reaction still to this day as we talk, is I'm against it. I don't understand, I guess, the side of the story from the folks that are saying that they've been discriminated against. When I started farming in 07, I went to the USDA, I went to the local bank, and I got loans, but my number one priority whenever I harvested my crop was to pay those two lenders back first.
Well, why aren't other farmers doing what you're doing? If it's not because of any type of disadvantage or discrimination, what else would there?
Well, because they choose to spend their money on other things, okay? Their priorities might not be right.
Do you think that applies to these disadvantaged farmers, that they're just mismanaging their money and buying things they can't afford?
I think the biggest is bad business decisions and mismanagement of money.
So you don't think debt should be forgiven based off of race?
No. I mean, why? If it's good, then come and relieve my debt too.
Farm service agencies are supposed to help farmers of color apply for the debt relief program by answering questions and helping them fill out documents. And a national USDA rep told Vice that all FSA offices were given information about the rollout of the debt relief program in March. But when Lewis called his FSA in April, he got a different story.
Good afternoon, Farm Service Agents.
Hey, how you doing? I was calling to see, have they gave any updates about the COVID relief bill, the debt cancellation for minority farmers?
We don't have no information.
When I called down to the FSA office, there was no word of it. The only communication back was all the farmers, white farmers and everyone should be able to get their debt canceled, not just you guys.
We reached out several times to the FSA office that Lewis called. We even visited their office, with no success. In a statement to Vice, the USDA said the agency is committed to equity and to ensuring that farmers have the resources they need to apply for debt relief. Eventually, we spoke to the person in charge of that effort.
We have already had to intervene from the upper levels of administration in cases where local FSA employees were not promoting the American Rescue Plan in the right way. And when we find out about those situations that are exceptions from what I would call maybe rogue employees, we are equipped to deal with it.
Can you talk about what that accountability will actually look like tangibly?
We have some people that don't get the message. They'll have to be dealt with. And we are prepared to do that. Now, whether that's some kind of training or some kind of remediation, some kind of termination, I don't know what those options are, but the expectation is that our employees will treat all of our customers with fairness and dignity.
Where do you see black farming in 5 years, 10 years?
There will still be a handful of black farms, but small, medium-sized farms, I think we'll still lose them. And that I'm not convinced that the department is going to make the structural changes to save them.
So what do you think the larger solution is to this problem?
Well, I think you need to restructure FSA, eliminate the county committees, and then you have to hold folk accountable.
Why was it important in the American Rescue Plan to dedicate this money for farmers of color?
The American Rescue Plan addressed some longstanding issues of discrimination that had been prevalent at the USDA for far too long. The disparity that existed between white farmers and farmers of color was pretty striking. And so as the American Rescue Plan was being developed, we wanted to use that as one of the ways that we would address some historical inadequacies that have been brought to light.
As it stands now, is there a timeline on when these farmers will actually see this debt relief?
The quick answer would be as quickly as possible. The American Rescue Plan mandates that we pay the loans that are outstanding as of January 1, 2021, roughly about 15,000 loans. And when you look at those 15,000 loans, there's a pretty wide range of complexity. So we're probably weeks away from that first wave that I just talked about, where the loans are direct, not as complicated. We're probably weeks away from those.
The farmers that we spoke to said that the issues that they're having is really on the local level. So what can be done to make sure that these local offices are held accountable?
What I've been saying is, don't get me involved in things that you can't prove or small things that are not warranted. But there's documented cases where you've been mistreated, denied, ignored, whatever. I want to know about it, because we're taking a targeted approach to root out racism. And if that means correcting some employees that need corrected, we're committed to doing that.
We have lawsuits popping up from white farmers that are saying that, Black farmers, disadvantaged farmers don't deserve this money and that their debt should be paid as well. So what can be done to kind of address this political divide within the farming community?
When you look at either the most recent pandemic, when you look at subsidies, when you look at the number of loans or the proportion of loans going to farmers of color, there are disparities that are fairly indisputable that says that no, we need to do some more work on racial equity. The second part, though, is dealing with trust. I'm aware of the prevailing attitude in the Black farming community that said, you got to be careful dealing with USDA, because in a lot of cases, you go in asking for a loan, you get tricked into losing your farm. And it adds to that level of distrust. I think we're spending our time trying to understand more about the causes of that distrust, deal with the causes, have some positive outcomes that I think will eventually turn the tide.